Welcome to the PitchVision Academy Cricket Show. We're around for a little while, a little haven for you of cricket coaching or playing cricket, helping you to improve your game. My name's David Hinchliffe. I look after things, and there's a couple of guys along to help me help you. The first is the Director of Cricket at Millfield School. It's Mark Garaway. Hello, Gary. You're not in Millfield today, though, are you?
I'm not, no. I'm at the old Stanford ground at Antigua, actually. It's a ground that I remember from the sort of fast school game that we had, the £1 million game, if you remember rightly. I think it was back in 2008, and recently the West Indies Cricket Board have taken over the running of the ground, and they're starting to put it all back together. It's going to become their academy and their headquarters, actually, which I think will really help them to get their organisation, their structure in place around player development. I think it'll be very useful to them. So over here for a couple of days, helping out with their level 3 coach education program, and we've got some pretty salubrious candidates, one of which is Curtly Ambrose, that I'm very much looking forward to spending time with over the next couple of days.
Yeah, a man of few words on the field, wasn't he? So be interesting to see what he's got to say on the coaching front.
Well, he's doing quite a lot of punditry and commentary now, and he's certainly got stuff to say, and I love the way he talks. He's so passionate about what he does. So really looking forward to spending some time with him, and I think there'll be a few laughs along the way as well.
And Laver's slightly less warm and sunny environment for you. You're in the gym, I understand.
I am, yeah. It's actually very bright outside. It's a lovely day down here, but I'm in the gym. We'll have some of the guys in for a session over lunchtime today, so I'm just keeping an eye on things. They all know what they're doing, so there shouldn't be too much for me to intervene with. But yeah, at least it's warm in here. It's a bit blustery outside, but I'm sure we'd all rather be where Gareth is at the moment.
Well, we'll keep an eye on those PRs for us while we go through the session. Anyone breaks any records, give us a live update.
Yeah, can't see any of that happen, to be honest. There'll be a lot of what have we got going on today. There'll be a bit of throwing some med balls. There'll be a bit of weight work, and some of the rugby boys are in as well, so they'll be doing their own thing.
Yeah, got some med balls and bands turn up today for the off-season training for some of the bowlers. So looking forward to getting stuck into that myself.
Oh, excellent. Can't beat a med ball. Love. Especially, I like to have a mix of med balls and slam balls.
Yeah.
But so many different things you can do with them. Really, really useful, and been a big addition since we brought them in the last 2 or 3 years. And seeing guys who are looking back at their records this morning, actually, who were bowling 52, 53 miles an hour as year 7s in year under 12s, who a year on are at 57, 58 miles an hour, which is really good to see. Partly because they're growing, partly because they're getting bigger and stronger naturally, but partly because they're doing a little bit of very basic fitness work, which is having an impact.
Yeah, it teaches you those movements which will help you in the bowling action, so it's got to be good.
Absolutely. Combine that with a bit of just general body weight work, so learning to control your body, and you see a little bit of progress.
Let's talk about bowling, because recently Craig McDermott, of course, very famous Australian bowler, has come out and said he thinks that certainly Australia are doing things a little bit wrong. What he's seen is guys who are playing at the top level who are not bowling as much as they used to when he was younger, and yet injury rates are climbing as well. So he's sort of put those two things together and said, must be doing something wrong here. The bowlers are not bowling enough. We need to sort that out. So my question around that is, what can we as coaches do, and what can bowlers themselves do to predict and prevent injury in fast bowling? It's a very difficult thing. You know, how do you predict the future? It's a very difficult thing to do, especially when it comes to human movement. You know, everybody moves in a different way. So what can we do about that? Is there anything we can do, or are we limited to hoping that, you know, they do their work in the gym and do a bit of prehab and get the bowling action as sound as possible, and away you go?
Well, I think everything that you've just said is a pretty good starting point, isn't it? But even that doesn't completely guarantee that you're not going to get an injury, because the whole thing about bowling is it's incredibly unnatural. If you think about the process, you run up in, as fast as you can really, or as fast as you can with control. You jump up in the air, you land with all the forces going into the ground. You try and stop yourself basically, so you can then transfer all your energies up your body, sling the ball down the other end as quick as you can, and then you start to follow through and move again. So there's a lot of stop-start. There's a lot of forces going up and down the body. So you wouldn't recommend that in terms of a decent, healthy thing to do, would you? But it's a huge part of our game, and so I think we're always going to get injuries, and it's easy to look back, isn't it, and with rose-coloured tinted glasses, I suppose, and say that we didn't have as many injuries, and maybe we didn't, but I also don't think that we had as many people that knew what to look for when those injuries started to manifest, really. So we've got, particularly at the top end of the game, we've got a lot of sports scientists that are picking up on things that weren't picked up on years ago. So we're more aware, and with more awareness, obviously, that the injuries have increased because we're more aware of what we're looking for. I'm sure bowlers bowled with stress fractures many moons ago, and got through seasons and then had 6 months off, which again, top bowlers don't get anymore, really, 6 months off. So, things have changed. So I think it's too easy to go, it's just a volume thing. I think that might have something to do with it, but again, as you said earlier, David, that's got to be individual, because bowling 30 overs a week for somebody it may not be enough, and bowling 30 overs for others may be too much, and it's a good question that Craig asked, but I don't think there's any definitive answer to it at the moment. It's probably one part of a bigger picture.
Yeah, and we certainly don't know all the answers yet, do we? It's still an area of quite a lot of investigation and research and experimentation, isn't it, Lavers? And I think we have developed, but we've still got some work to do in terms of working out how much bowling works for people, how much and what type of strength and conditioning works for people, and also things like the type of surfaces that bowlers are bowling on and things like that. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and I think, anyway, I don't know if you agree, but I think it's a bit more complicated than just saying, well, bowlers need to bowl more.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more complicated than that, and it's definitely more complicated as well than just having a blanket ruling that's going to protect everybody. Everybody's different, and that's where we need coaches who are able to work with players technically to make sure that they're as safe as they possibly can be when they're going into bowl, but also work with them from a management point of view to ensure that they're not overdoing it, and recognising when a player is potentially getting to the limit of what they can be doing, and also when someone's got more in the tank and they're looking after their movements in a way that they can keep going. But I know the kind of the intention of limiting what a bowler does and trying to protect them that way is all with the best of intentions, clearly, but it doesn't reduce someone's lateral flexion. It doesn't stop someone from running into their local club and just going and bowling another 10 overs on their own with their little brother. It doesn't really have an enormous impact on the bigger picture, and I think from the technical point of view, I would say that while more people are becoming aware of it, I think we're accelerating physically more than we're accelerating technically. So we're probably putting more stress through our bodies as we run faster, jump higher, jump further, land with more force, create more force going through that body as we improve physically. And not everyone is necessarily keeping up to the same technical developments at the same time. For a lot of people, especially within schools, that physical development will come through a fitness coach or a program in another sport where they're developing themselves from a gym angle and they're improving themselves as athletes. But if they don't have that specialist in place to offer the sort of technical support, it's not necessarily going to be beneficial, and it could potentially be a bigger hindrance than was at first kind of intended.
And Steph Jones is doing some great work around this concept of the fragile and the anti-fragile bowler, which is an interesting way of putting it. And his sort of thesis, if you like, is that bowlers tend to do their gym work, do their bowling, and then don't do anything else, especially if you're talented and you're moving through the system. And his way of solving this problem is creating a much broader set of physical experiences for bowlers. So, playing other simple things like playing other sports, and also doing things we were talking about, medicine balls before, working with medicine balls, doing more crossover type stuff that goes into technique as well, and having someone who is, rather than being really, really locked into one thing, having someone who is what Steph calls anti-fragile, which is a term that I might not like the actual term. I think it might be a bit ugly, but I like the idea behind it of saying, well, let's create guides who are robust in more than just having, a bowling action that hasn't got a kink in it, or being able to lift a lot of weight in the gym.
That's one of the things that we put in place, and I introduced what we call an athletic development program a couple of years ago down here at PGS, and what we do is we try and work with boys all the way up to, boys and girls all the way up to kind of age of 15, 16, 17, depending on who they are, and all it is developing them as an all-round athlete. And then one of the actual words we have in place is we're looking for an all-round robust athlete, so someone who isn't susceptible to injury, someone who you can throw into a different situation. You can put them in a hockey match, you can put them in a rugby match, you can put them in different situations, and they're physically capable of looking after themselves and being able to withstand a period of time in that. Whether or not they know how to play the game or not, they're not necessarily going to do as well as that you might want them to, but they're physically capable of being robust in whatever environment you throw over to. After that, guys, by the time they're 16, 17, 18, they probably have a bit more of an idea of what they actually want to go into, and they maybe want to start specialising a little bit. And we do start channeling the programmes accordingly. So there's going to be a slight lean towards a bit of power development, or a bit of core strength, or a bit of depending on what their role is and what they're trying to do. But hopefully that's being built on a basis of them being a robust athlete, rather than just being built on ball just being thrown on top of nothing. And sometimes, one of the phrases we actually used this morning is, sometimes people, they're trying to put the cherry on top of the cake, and they've forgotten to make the cake in the first place. And you've got to go and build that foundation first before you try and put the fancy things on top.
Let's answer some questions that have been sent in by listeners to the show, or maybe readers, over at the PitchVision website at pitchvision.com. And what we do is we answer those questions as best we can in the time available, and then we choose the best question of the week that wins a prize, which is an online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at pitchvision.com. You can email us with your questions on coach@pitchvision.com. And someone who's done that this week is George. And George says, I recently went to county under 15 trials and was told I did not have a good enough technique to be selected. The coach was very good in telling me exactly what I needed to change. He told me my grip is wrong and it will stop me doing well. I do have a different grip to most. The coach calls it a claw, but I think I can do well anyway. Should I change? And how can I change?
Firstly, good work from the coach in not only giving some clean feedback, which I think is really vital for people to move on. So the lad hasn't been selected, he's then been given some clean feedback on some of the limitations in his game and some advice on what he needs to do to change. So really good effort from the county coach there. That doesn't always happen, and I'm really heartened to hear that process goes on in that particular county. So well done on that. The second thing I would say is that grips for me are probably the most difficult element to change in batting, actually, because obviously the element of feel through your hands is quite significant, and having that bat in a position that feels natural to you, as we've seen with people like Graham Smith, for example, who would have an unconventional grip and still be very successful. That having that feel in your hands is really important. If you're going to bat and if you're going to manoeuvre the ball, it's got to be a little bit individual. But also, I'm really interested in this claw grip, because my sort of mental imagery inside my head here when I hear about a claw grip is that your bottom hand is the one that's got a claw type approach to it. And we see that quite a lot with people that might have been heavy bottom-handed players in the previous couple of years, then go to a very light grip. Now, I might be completely wrong. It might be your top hand in this, but until I really work out whether it's a top or bottom hand, I don't quite know how to advise you. But ultimately, there have been people in cricket like Graham Smith, who, I tried to change his grip when he was a kid and he pushed me back quite rightly, who, it's about feel. So as long as you can get that bat face going somewhere towards the ball and being square at ball contact, then it can work for you, and it doesn't necessarily need to be as significant a limiter as maybe the coach had pointed out in the first place. But my suggestion would be take a picture of the grip on a mobile phone, send it in, and then we'll be able to give you some more specific feedback. I need to know whether it's top hand or bottom hand first.
And I guess that's the wider point, isn't it, Lavers, that what kind of results is he getting with that grip? If he's smashing everything all the time with no problems, then, perhaps it's not time to change. But if he is restricted in some way, if he can't drive very well, for example, then is their grip something to have a look at and experiment with and try and find out a way of making a change? But you've got to start with the end, really, haven't you? And how are you performing by having that grip?
Yeah, I'd probably want a little bit more specificity from that coach, which is very difficult because that coach has no doubt picked 15 or 16 players to be in a squad, and he's turned down 20 or 30 or 40. So giving everyone very specific feedback is very, very tricky. But if you then go back to him again and say, look, you've said it's going to stop me doing well. Could you expand on it? Can you tell me what it's going to do? What's the limiting factor going to be? And it might be that he feels it's going to limit the power, or it's going to limit the directions you can hit the ball, or the shots you can play. So it's going to have something, and he might have a response to that. But you want to work out what's the compromise at the moment. Because if you're playing well and you're scoring runs and you've got something that's successful, then perhaps it's something you want to stick with. And even though it's individual, we've seen individuals with all kinds of techniques make it all the way to the top. So how well are you performing? How well do you want to perform? And what's going to get you from A to B? And if it's this grip that's going to get you from A to B, then fantastic. Let's go and make a change. Let's think about what it prevents us doing and how we can adjust it to allow us to do what we want to. If, however, the grip isn't going to be a big factor in getting you from where you are to where you want to be, or the shots you can play, the shots you want to play, or whatever it might be, then maybe you look elsewhere. But definitely think about how it compares to your actual performances, how it impacts on your performances, and if you can get a little bit more feedback, which the sooner that you can, the better. From that coach, then try to, because he's obviously spoken to you recently, so I hope it's fairly fresh in his mind, so he might be able to give you that little bit more. And you never know, you might be able to get a couple of sessions with him and say, look, I really want to do this, and he might be able to come and help you out. Yeah,
that would be great, especially, I guess, if you're ambitious, you're thinking about, I want to play in that team, and, I want to make sure that the coach is on my side, then, getting coaching directly from the guy give you feedback is one of the best ways to reach that goal, isn't it? To be able to say, I can listen to you, perhaps you can listen to me as well, and we can work out the best way between us of what's going to work for me.
Yeah, we don't know whether the coach has had that conversation, so we need a little bit more information, because he may have a view, and a lot of coaches do. But your grip needs to be like that. Equally, he might have given those parameters. Well, actually, you've been pretty successful, but if you're going to keep with that grip, then it's really important that you have the capacity to open the wrist or whatever, as a number of players have done in the past. I mean, I keep going back to Graham Smith, probably because he had the least conventional grip that we've seen, that has then gone on to score a significant amount of runs in international cricket.
Next question is from Graham. I'm not sure who Graham is, but perhaps he's a dad or someone who's just getting into coaching or something like that, because he said, what does a typical coaching session look like for an 11-year-old these days?
Well, it could look like anything, really, I suppose, couldn't it? I guess what we're trying to do with people who are young is get some really fundamental skills into them, get them a good understanding of, from a batting point of view, having a range of shots. I mean, you can prioritise a few shots, so there's going to be a whole range of things. So it can go from anything from hitting tennis balls, trying to learn some new technique, trying to create shots that, or trying to allow them to create shots that maybe haven't played before, allowing them to make decisions against different types of deliveries, putting them into different game environments, and having games that make them think about how to set fields, where to bowl, where to hit the ball, that kind of thing. So I guess for me, I'm a combination of trying to stimulate a bit of thinking about their technique, and also trying to stimulate a bit of creativity about how they want to play. But definitely trying to get them switched on brain-wise, so they're thinking about how they are doing things, rather than just saying, there's a game, play it or don't play it, or kind of bowl how you bowl, and don't be thinking about it at all. Try and give them a little bit of understanding, and I definitely, without necessarily trying to change them too much and say you have to do this and you can't do that, I'd definitely try and show them what they look like as well. Give them some video footage and show them how they look, and they might look at it and think, actually, I can see straight away that might be why this is working, or this might be why I can't do that, or whatever it might be. So I'd certainly be looking to get a little bit of video footage in there, so they can start taking control of that process of developing themselves technically, because if they don't see themselves, it's very difficult to understand your movements and visualise them. So I'd throw a bit of that in there at some stage as well. But again, you're going to probably have a block of sessions over a period of time. You'd like to think, so maybe over 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it would be, you'd have a variety of things that you're trying to kind of stimulate or challenge in various different environments. So difficulty levels can go from very, very simple to very, very, very challenging, and match situations can go from very, very relaxed to hopefully something that's quite competitive as well.
That's one of the things that came out actually from the ECB conference, was which we've talked about in previous shows, this idea of playing games and doing it in a more games-based way, and sort of setting challenges rather than trying to coach techniques or correct techniques, because often kids will come without any baggage, and they'll come with novel solutions to problems that you set them. Right? Even as something as simple as you've got to hit the ball. In this game you've got to hit the ball straight. You're going to hit it straight, and you get points for hitting it straight. And you hit it anywhere else, you don't get anything. So something as simple as that might be you're encouraging a skill, a cricketing skill of hitting the ball straight, but you're doing it in a way that the game is set up, rather than lining kids up and getting them to do it without a ball or from a drop feed or whatever. So especially I feel like with younger kids, the more you can play games, the more you can engage them with the game, that's a cricket-like game, then the better that you'll do. And certainly at that age, you can start to make it a lot more cricket-like, whereas maybe it's a bit younger, it'll be a bit less cricket-like. But as much as you can, I feel like, if it's games, as much variation in games as possible, in order to encourage the skills that we want to develop in kids of that age.
The only thing I'd say sort of contrary to that would be that a game doesn't mean 11v11 or a pitch or anything like that. A game can be a challenge. And in football, it often means having a game, and it might be a condensed game of 3-on-3, or rugby where you play 4-on-4 in a small space, or whatever it might be. But in cricket, I'm a big believer in still guys hitting as many balls as they can, and that doesn't come from games. That comes from what people seem to think are drills. But drills are games with fewer people, effectively. So if you can set up a competitive drill situation where you've got 3 targets and you're going to you've got to hit through 3 targets in different orders, or you've got to do something, that is a game. Okay, don't get kind of clouded by the whole idea that drills aren't good things and that's a drill. That is very much a game. It's stimulating thought, it's stimulating self-learning and teaching yourself how to play something. And it's got the added value that a game often doesn't have, is you're going to hit 100 balls rather than you're going to hit 10 balls in an hour. So think about a game creatively rather than picturing a pitch. and lots of people stood around on a pitch, think about what the essence of what we're trying to create is, and that is bowlers that can bowl into certain places, batters that can can hit the ball into certain areas, and from that we can build up and have actual physical games in addition, but not instead of.
Yeah, I guess you need to be clear on the terms, don't you, between the difference between a game of cricket, which is 11 v 11 and U20 overs or whatever it is, and games that are for training, or I guess in other sports, like football, they call them small-sided games, don't they? But whatever the cricket version of that is, you still have to have some kind of challenge in there. That's what you're looking for, I think.
There's got to be a reason for them to want to get better at the little thing they're doing, and even if they can't correlate that little exercise with them going out playing in the middle, you've got to find a way for them to want to be better at it and want to challenge themselves, and a bit of a competitive edge, or something that makes them feel like, I want to be better at this, even if I can't see its connection to how my score runs on the weekend, is what we need to do, because otherwise we're just doing things without any particular reason, which obviously isn't going to be really engaging or exciting for the young guys.
And it teaches you that you have to adapt as well. You can't just, if you learn to play the absolute perfect cover drive every time from a bobble feed or a drop feed, then you haven't got much adaptability if the circumstances are different. The different speeds of bowling, different types of pitches, different amounts of swing and spin. All of those things mean that you have to make very small adjustments. And really good players are really good at making really small adjustments. And lesser players are not quite so adaptable. So if you build in that little bit of, uncertainty, I suppose, that little bit of chaos, that little bit of, I'm not sure whether my perfectly executed technique is going to work in this situation, then it makes you adapt, and it makes you learn that you need to be able to adapt on the fly when you go out there and play on a, on a sticky wicket, or on a, on an absolute road, or, the bowlers are all relatively quick for your age, or whatever it is. You need to have that ability to be able to adapt.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more, and it's kind of what we touched on a little bit last week in the podcast, is that we want to develop cricketers that can think for themselves, they can think their way into and out of situations, so that whatever's presented for them, they can come up with a way of doing it, and maybe they can't absolutely execute it straight away, but they get in that habit of thinking for themselves and trying to find ways to get out of situations that they find themselves in.
Yeah, so have fun, set challenges, enjoy it. And that is the end of the show for another week. Before we go, there's just one more thing we need to decide, and that's the winner of the competition. The online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at pitchvision.com is up for grabs. And we had George's question about his claw grip and his county trials. And we had Graham's question about coaching sessions for under 11s. Which one did you prefer this week, Gareth?
I like Graham's question this week. I thought it was a fantastic question, which you two answered brilliantly, hence why I didn't add anything, because I wouldn't have added any value to that. So that was brilliant. But also in George, I'm going to set him a challenge. I'd like him to send in the same question, but with some pictures of his grip, because that will really help us to give him a specific answer. So if he does that in the future, then I'm sure he'll give himself a great chance of winning the prize.
Good stuff. Bit of follow-up there, George, if you can do that for us. And then, Gareth, if someone else was listening to the show who wanted to have their question answered and maybe win that prize, how could they get in touch with us?
They could give us a call on 0203 239 7543 or drop us an email on coach@pitchvision.com.
That's right. There's a little bit more admin. You can get us on social media, of course. If you want to send your questions or comments in there, you can do that either on pitchvision.com. We've got a messaging system there, or on Facebook. Facebook.com/PitchVision Academy, or Twitter @PitchVision Acad. You've got double the amount of space to send in a question now, as of this week. If you want to listen to the show, you can do that by subscribing in any podcast playing application. Just search for PitchVision Academy. You'll find us in there. And if you want to get any of the old shows, stream the show online, download the show onto your computer or device, then you can do all that at pitchvision.com/academy and clicking on the podcast link. That's all for this week. We hope you listen next week, but until then, have a good week. Cheers, Gareth. Cheers, Lavers.